Good morning and welcome to Wordsworth's Ode to Duty. Wordsworth, 1770 to 1850, is the greatest English romantic poet who was the poet laureate from 1843 until his death in 1850. His very famous Ode to Duty, is prescribed to us, which begins with an epigraph of Seneca. Seneca's letters 120.10 is what is prescribed, is what is here. I am no longer good through deliberate intent, Seneca says, but by long habit have achieved a point where I am not only able to do right, but I am able to do anything but what is right. This is a very beautiful introduction to Wordsworth's Ode to Duty. In the very first stanza, we saw as to how Wordsworth refers duty as the daughter of the voice of God. This daughter is stern and she works like a torch that guides the right path for the people and corrects those who do wrong. The second stanza tells us that there are some people who govern themselves through the inner sense of conscience of right and wrong. They do not care whether they are being observed by others, but they do only the right because they are on the path of duty. They are guided by the principle of love and truth. And even if they go out of their path, it is duty that brings them to the right path, and they're always happy. The third stanza explains as to how and what the life of the duty bound people looks like. The third stanza explains the life of the duty bound people, those who conduct their life with moral obligations of doing good and noble and believe in the great powers of love for all forms of life. They have a very peaceful and happy life. However, duty supports them whenever they need its help. The fourth stanza onwards, the ode becomes very interesting. It becomes autobiographical from the fourth stanza. The poem shifts to the autobiographical notes in the life of the poet. Wordsworth mentions that in his young age, he never thought of the rules of duty at all. He loved and enjoyed limitless freedom of the soul and spent a life guided by his inner wishes and desires. Of course, he did not break any rules of duty. He has not broken the limits of moral and sensible behavior, but he never followed the path of duty, but he always followed the path of freedom. Now, as a grown up person, in the last line, he says, he has made his mind to follow the path of duty. Let's continue the discussion and take it to the fifth stanza. The fifth stanza, the poet decided now to follow the path of duty because in his young days he did not follow the path of duty. Now, as a grown up adult, he decided to follow the path of duty. Through no disturbance of my soul or strong compunction in me wrought. Compunction is repentance. Repentance or regret, where the poet regrets as to why he did not follow the path of duty in his young days. Or strong compunction in me wrought, I supplicate for thy control. Supplication is asking. So he asks duty that he wants to surrender to it and wants to follow the path of duty now as a grown up man, though he did not follow the path of duty as a young man. So I supplicate for thy control. Thy is duty here. Supplication is asking, succumbing, or begging. But in the quietness of thought, me this unchartered freedom tires. I feel the weight of chance desires. Earlier, when he was young, he had unchartered freedom to follow. He loved his freedom, not duty. And he also followed the chance and desires. He always follows his own heart, his thoughts, his desires, his wishes, and his unchartered freedom. But now he says that he is supplicating, he is asking for surrendering his freedom, his chance, his desires, and his wishes to duty. My hopes no more must change their name. I long for a repose that ever in the same. Repose is permanently, I would want to surrender to you so that I can achieve peace of mind by following duty. So, this is a grown up man. The fourth stanza talks about the poet when he was in young age, where he followed freedom, where he followed his desires and his heart to a greater extent, and not duty. And in the fifth stanza, now that the poet is grown up and is matured. Now he has decided to follow the path of duty. So the fifth stanza explains that he has decided to follow the path of duty not because of any of the weaknesses or wrongdoings of his past life. Rather, his decision comes out of the quietness of thought and the maturity of mind. Through the experience of life, he has realized that only laws can give and assure the best freedom. The freedom is achieved and enjoyed within bounds. So he rejects the unchartered freedom that he experienced in his youth and the chance and desires that he wished to follow when he was young, and decides to submit to the duty to enjoy a permanent status of peace and his blessed life. So, in the fifth stanza, the poet has become matured. Let's go down to the sixth stanza. The sixth stanza actually develops a central argument of the poem, the relation between God, nature, and man. For Wordsworth, God is not limited to any religion, and especially not only to Christianity. God is some supernatural power that controls everything or that sees that everything in this universe go on in a very systematic way. So let's see the sixth stanza. Yet not the less would I throughout still act according to the voice of my own wish, and feel past doubt that my submissiveness was choice. So he says, I still follow my own wish, and I know very well that my submissiveness to duty is not out of compulsion, is not out of bad life that I led in my youth, but it was my choice to submit. I wanted to submit to duty. I have understood the importance of duty and a rule bound life, which gives you permanent happiness and peaceful life. So I have submitted. It is not out of compulsion. That my submissiveness was my choice, not seeking in the school of pride for precepts over dignified, denial and restraint I prize no farther than they breed a second will more wise. Yani my second will, my second wish, my second desire to submit myself before duty is my choice. Out of choice, I have submitted, and that gives me a greater satisfaction in life. So, the sixth stanza continues the ideas of the fifth stanza as to and explains as to why he has submitted to duty. It is not out of compulsion, it is not out of a bad life in past that he has led, but it is because of his choice to lead a more dignified life, a more peaceful life, a more stable life, and experience permanent happiness and joy that he has submitted to duty. No farther than they breed a second will more wise. So the second will was wiser than the experience of freedom, he says. Now, the seventh stanza, stern lawgiver, this completely is showing a connection between God, nature, and man. Nature strictly follows God's laws as duty. And that's the reason why everything is going on harmoniously in nature. So he gives a number of examples as to how nature is following the laws of God, the duty of God, and everything is so beautiful and perfect in nature. Stern lawgiver, he addresses to duty and God, yet thou dost wear the God's head most benignant grace. So you are so benignant, blessing, blessful you are with grace, nor know we anything so fair as is the smile upon thy face. Flowers laugh before thee on their beds, and fragrance in thy footing treads. Thou dost preserve the stars from doing anything wrong, and the most ancient heavens, though thee, are fresh and strong. Everything in nature is perfect and beautiful because they are dutiful to God and its rules. Flowers look beautiful with their fragrance and their delicacy because they bloom in the morning and they wither in the evening, following the duty of God. Similarly are the stars. Similarly are the ancient heavens, the sun, the moon. Everything in nature is perfect only because they are following the rules of God. They are dutiful. And that's why he says, for Wordsworth, God is not limited to any religion and especially not only to Christianity. For him, the notion of God represents a controlling power that puts the things in proper order. In this stanza, he calls duty as the strict divine lawgiver. The objects in nature follow the strict rules designed for them. The cycle of seasons of nature never deviate from their given course. The flowers bloom at the right time. The stars and the objects in the space to which Wordsworth calls the ancient heaven move in their designated orbit or route. If they start moving as per their whims and wishes or uncharted freedom, the universe will lose its harmony and will get totally destroyed. It is due to the strict rule of duty this heaven is fresh and strong even after millions of years and will continue to remain so in the future years to come. The nature strictly follows the dictates of duty and creates and preserves the natural harmony intact. The human beings are blessed and beloved inmates of nature, and hence they too should follow the path of duty in order to make their life happy and meaningful. It's a beautiful stanza that gives out the central argument of Wordsworth's essence of understanding of nature. This is the central argument of the poem that gives the relationship between God, nature, and man. And so, to humble, he says, functions, the eighth stanza talks about, to humble functions, awful power I call thee. You are an awful power, he says. The poet completely submits to God and duty, and he says, you function in a very humble way. An awful power you are, I call thee. I myself commend unto thy guidance from this hour. So from this hour, I submit to you totally, because nature is so beautiful and is functioning so well only because it is following the duties of God. So, similarly, when I want to make my life beautiful by submitting myself to the duty of God, unto thy guidance from this hour, from now onwards, I submit to you. Oh, let my weakness have an end. So, my weakness is not following duty, but my weakness is to be free and following my desires. Let me put a full stop to my desires and wishes. Let me be more dutiful. Give unto me, made lowly wise, the spirit of self sacrifice. So, oh, duty, make me more wise and give me a sense of self sacrifice, sacrificing my own self in order to perform the duty of God and nature. The confidence of reason give. Reason is definitely there. And in the light of truth, thy bondman, let me live. Let me slave you. Let me become a slave to you. Bondman is a very beautiful word that is used in the last line that completely expresses the poet's wish to become the slave to duty, to God, to nature, so that his life could be more beautiful. So the last stanza, the eighth stanza, and the final stanza of the ode strongly justifies the poet's decision to submit himself willingly and consciously in the charge of duty. He requests the daughter of the voice of God, that is duty, to put an end to his flaws of following the path of unrestricted freedom and desires to make him wise, humble, and thoughtful. He asks her to bless him with the true spirit of self sacrifice. It means a journey from the selfish egotism to the selfless altruism. He is now assured that only reason and not mere spontaneous impulse can make one responsible and duty bound inmates of nature. He urges duty to make him her bondman, that is, her slave, rather a devotee who will live a content life in the light of truth provided by the duty. So it's a beautiful piece of poem that continues with Wordsworth's mission of establishing a man's relation with nature. Thank you very much for being a part of this beautiful poem by Wordsworth. Bye for now.